everyone. My name's Mitch Hardy. I'm the Manager of Regional Services here at the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries. I'd like to welcome you this morning. Thanks for getting up nice and early to come along to the East Perth Football Club to enjoy our Community Coaches Masterclass this morning. I'd like to acknowledge that this event is being held on the traditional lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respect to the elders both past and present. This morning we've got two special guests, and we're hoping that the aim of this morning is that all the coaches that have come along this morning will walk away feeling enthused and empowered to make a difference in community sport, as well as be equipped with some things to try in your coaching landscape with your athletes and clubs. Coaching is a fantastic pastime. I've had many good coaches over the course of my sporting career, as well as I'm a passionate coach myself in a couple of different sports. And I think we can all appreciate the time, effort, and the intricacies that coaching brings about, and the challenges as well, both with dealing with players and athletes, but also with dealing with parents. And we're very lucky this morning to have an international guest. Our guest this morning, our first guest this morning, is the author of the #1 best-selling book, Changing the Game, The Parent's Guide to Raising Happy, High-Performing Athletes and Giving Youth Sports Back to Our Kids, and Is It Wise to Specialise? He's an internationally known TEDx speaker and the founder of the Changing the Game project, which he started in 2012 to better educate parents, coaches and youth sports organisations and put more play into playing sport. John is a former professional soccer player who coached for 20 years at youth, high school and college level in the US. He's been an advisor and presenter for numerous sporting organisations across the globe, including US soccer, football, lacrosse, swimming and hockey. And he sits on the National Advisory Board for the Positive Coaching Alliance and the National Association for Physical Literacy in the US. His blog gets nearly 5 million visits a year, and his goal is to keep more kids active, healthy and involved in physical activity. If you please welcome Mr. John O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Mitch. What I would like to cover in the next 40 minutes or so, and then Troy will build upon, is really looking at our coaching and the tremendous impact that we can have on our kids. Now, I'm not here to fix you. I'm not here to change you. Just the mere fact that you signed up and you showed up here today tells me that you are dedicated and you are in it for the right reasons. And so my goal today is not to fix you, but just maybe add a few things. So there was a soccer coach I knew named René Muhlenstein, and he was Alex Ferguson's assistant at Manchester United and then a Premier League coach. And he said, you know, most coaches come in to a new team and the first thing they say is, this is all that's wrong and this is what I'm going to fix. And he said, but I don't think that's a really good approach. He says, what I like to do is I like to come in and I like to watch them and say, I see a few things I can add to your game that'll make you better. And so my only hope today is that maybe I'll give you a few things to add to your game, to add to some of the great stuff that you're already doing, and you can say, yeah, I can add that, or I can add that. In the world of coaching these days, we have two types of coaching, really, a transactional or a transformational. Now, a lot of youth sports organizations, a lot of coaches are transactional. You pay me money or you pay your money, you learn skills. But the truly great coaches in the world, and we'll explore the great coaches in our own lives here in just a little bit, the best coaches, they're transformational. They're in it for the athlete first, for the team second, for themselves last. And they teach skills that last far beyond the sporting field or the basketball court or whatever it is. The thing about coaching is it's really, really hard. When you think about it, we work with children, it's public, it's emotional, we keep score, and yet something we say or something that we do can stick with a kid for the rest of their life. And we don't get to pick and choose what that is and what they forget, sometimes conveniently forget. So we have to be so intentional about everything we do. So let me try to add to your toolbox in 3 ways here today. And if you have a question along the way, please ask. Right? This is actually far more fun if it's a discussion, and it's far more real if it applies to exactly what you're doing instead of what I might see in lots of different places. Now I get to travel, as Mitch said, I get to travel the world, and I've worked across every sport. I've learned about new sports that I didn't know existed. I haven't done curling yet, which is apparently becoming pretty popular in the Olympics here now, right? But from ice hockey in Canada to I just spent a week in Europe with the director of coaching for Belgium soccer. I've worked with rugby in England and all sorts of different places. And so today I want to kind of just talk about three things, and then Troy's going to build on them as well. So first, really a look at what is quality coaching. What does great coaching look like? Then how do we intentionally build our team culture and shape the behavior in our group? Because realistically, the younger the kids that we're working with, we have to start thinking that performance is not about outcomes, performance is about behaviors. It's about just instilling the right habits and the right behaviors in those kids that allow them to succeed over the long term. And then finally, if we get to it, what are some of the ideas and research around what do effective practices look like? How do people learn best in that short time that we have with them? Okay, sound good? All right, so I want to start. Did anyone not get those 5 sticky notes that were going around? All right, so everyone got some. You guys need some? I'll drop some in a sec here. So on your sticky notes, we're going to take a look at our best coach that we have ever had, right? So I would like you to think about what are the 4 or 5 qualities of the best coach you ever had, doesn't matter what level or age, and write them down 1 per sticky note. All right, so it's a word or phrase that describes the best coach you ever had. He bought me beer is not a great thing, but you could do that if you want. All right, there's no wrong answers here, so it could be knowledgeable or inspiration or passion or any of those sort of things. So go ahead. Okay, as some of you, I see some heads coming up, so you're finishing up. Here's what I'd like you to do, and if we can this is a tough room to do this, but it's well worth doing just to look and see. When you're ready, I'm going to ask you to come up to the front with your sticky notes, and here's what we're going to do. On this side of the stage, just on this wall here, put any sticky notes that have to do with your coach's knowledge of the sport. Right? This is the X's and O's, the tactics, the technical training. Put any of those sticky notes here. And then on this side over here, under this television, under this screen, put anything that has to do with your coach's ability to connect. The relationship side, how they inspired you, how they cared, how they communicated, okay? So this side is connection, this side is knowledge of the sport, okay? So go ahead, whenever you're ready, you can come stick them up. This part you can get wrong. All right, so do your best to get them on the right side. Every wall is different, and I buy the cheap sticky notes, so we'll see how long they stick. I need a Post-it sponsorship. Awesome. Well, as you make your way back to your seat, I think you can see a pattern emerging, a small pattern emerging. It's going to be raining yellow sticky notes for the rest of our session here. By the time Troy gets to go, it'll be especially distracting. There we go. Well, especially with the fan. But anyway, I only need a couple minutes to make my point, right? So when we talk about the qualities of the best coach we ever had, and I've done this activity sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. Here, just join me. Can you hear? No, I'm joking. Sorry about that. So when we talk about the qualities of the best coach we ever had, and I've done this all over the world from Asia to Europe, Canada, US, here in Australia, just to New South Wales last week, it always looks the same. When we think about the qualities of our best coach ever, It's always 90-10, 80-20. The ability to connect the relationship side of things as opposed to the technical piece. Now, this is not ever to say that the technical piece doesn't matter. Of course it matters. It's incredibly important. Right? It's incredibly important. The more of that you know, the more creative you can be in your coaching, the quicker you can tweak stuff, the more you can develop sessions to fix the things that need work. But it's just not sufficient. It's not sufficient. Show of hands if you didn't put any on that side. Yeah, look around the room. That's about it, 20% or so. And was that because that's not important?
Never even occurred to me.
Never even occurred to you, right? It's just not what you remember, right? It's not what you remember. It's not what sticks. I've never been invited to a wedding of a former player because they're like, oh man, you taught me how to play this position so well, right? So the difference between, this wall here, that makes you a technical trainer, and this wall makes you a coach. And the younger the athletes that you work with, the more they need a coach. And I'd even say at the top level, they need a coach. When I work with directors of sport, right, and if we look around professional sport, no coach ever gets fired for that. They get fired because they can't connect, they can't get a group of people moving in the same direction and believing in each other and believing in the coach and believing what they're doing. So it's really, really important that when we are improving ourselves as coaches, that we don't just look at that wall. Yet the problem in coaching education in almost every sport across the globe is that when you go and do a coaching certification, where do you spend 98% of your time? On what wall? On this one, right? And so this is a challenge for sporting organizations to say, we can't just develop technical trainers, we have to develop coaches. Because technical trainers teach skills, and that's very important, but coaches keep people in the game. Coaches keep people active in playing a sport for life. And so my challenge to all of you is, right, can we become coaches? Can we become people who are transformational? Now, the research in this area says that these are the top 5 qualities that kids are looking for. Respect and encouragement, positive role model, clear, consistent communication, know what you're talking about, be a good listener. And even at the top end of sport, I think these apply. I've never met an athlete who's like, oh yeah, when that coach is totally disrespectful and treats me like crap, that's really helpful, right? Don't pay attention, don't care, right? So this is what the research shows, and this little link at the bottom here, youthreport.projectplay.us. I know Troy has it linked to in his thing as well. This is where a lot of the best research in the world now especially on 12 and under sport is. Now, one of the things that I think is most important when it comes to coaching is that the knowledge, the intelligence, it has to be on the field, not on the sideline. It's very easy to yell and scream instructions and move players around, as we might call in the United States, joystick coaching, to get a result today. But if we truly want long-term learning and we want our children in sport to own the experience, then we have to strip that out of our game. We have to let it belong to them. We have to let them figure things out. In any sport, whether it's football or rugby or soccer or hockey or any of the basketball, netball, any of these fast-moving sports, when you think about it, before an athlete technically executes a skill, they have to perceive the field, they have to come up with potential solutions to the problem the game presents them, they have to choose one. If they're clever, they add some deception before they go the other way. They then technically execute it, then they have to assess their choice. Right? All in a split second. So how much input can they actually take? Right? They have to solve this themselves. And I want to show you what I mean. So we all have something called selective attention. There's no such thing as multitasking. You can only focus on one thing at a time. And I'm going to show you what I mean here. So I'm going to show you a little video And I'm going to ask you to count how many passes the people in white make, okay? So how many times do they pass the basketball to each other over 30 seconds here, okay? And then let me know at the end if you think you have the answer, all right? Here we go. Just the whites.
How many passes did you count?
How many? 16? 15? Who thinks it was 15? Who thinks it was 16? Who thinks it was 27? No. All right. 15 was the answer. Did anyone notice anything about that as well? The gorilla? Raise your hand if you didn't notice a gorilla. Please be honest. All right, look around. Raise your hand high. Okay. Half of you are lying. Let's watch it again. Thank you for your honesty.
How many passes did you count?
Right? So we all have selective attention. When we're focusing on one thing, we cannot focus on something else. If I'm on the field and I'm focused on making the decisions that the game requires, then I cannot focus on input from the sideline, whether it comes from the coach or whether it comes from my parents, right? Which is a whole nother problem. That's my talk tonight. Right? We all have selective attention. At Manchester United, they have a rule. They say, especially with the young kids, we don't coach when the ball's rolling. When the ball's moving, they don't say anything during matches. And then when it stops, they do. Or they coach the person off the ball. And they say, hey, where do you think you should be right now? Right? Versus saying, hey, Johnny, go here. Push inside. Step up. So they help them solve and make those decisions. Okay? So think about that in your coaching from now on, that training, that's our time to give lots of input, but still there should be a lot of accountability and decision making, right? And then let the matches, let those belong to the players. It's very, very important. All right. Number 2, understanding that culture and behavior, it's a process, not an event. It's something that happens over time, over and over and over. But when they ask children what makes sports fun, what makes them come back and play, one of the leading reasons is positive team dynamics, a great team. And whether in business or in sports, the most highly functioning, successful teams are ones that intentionally create a great culture. They talk about core values. They talk about behaviors. They talk about this is how we do things here. And they talk about them over and over and over. They cannot be over communicated. So a core value on a sporting team or a business, right? Your guiding principle. It dictates your behavior and action. It tells you are you on the right path or on the wrong path. Core values are nice when you're winning. Core values are essential when you're struggling, because they're usually the things that you can control, right? What are the controllables that we have in every game? Are we getting after it? Are we chasing after it? Are we working hard? Are we committed? Are we focused, right? Do we train well? So I think the most important thing you can do with your teams is establish some core values, because that guides the culture. So here's how you can do this in 20 minutes at your next practice. So a couple years ago, about a year and a half ago now, 2 years ago, I got asked, my daughter, who's 12 now, her coach quit. And the organization then would say, can you please come in and coach the team? And it was a disaster. And they were all over the place. They weren't learning anything. So my first practice, I sat the girls down, 10, 11-year-old girls, and I said, all right, ladies, give me an adjective that describes a great teammate. And they said, what's an adjective? Right? And so I taught them that, right? But then they came up with these words: teamwork, encourager, helpful, sportsman, supportive, respectful, great attitude, fearless, communicator, positive, focused, caring, trustworthy, hard worker. And at the bottom here, it says, I commit to being the type of teammate described above. And they all signed it. I signed it too. And in 20 minutes, we had a value system for our team, that this is who I want to be every day, and this is who I want to be held accountable for being, both by my coach, and then eventually, if coach does his job, by my teammates. And so here's how this becomes real. First of all, I took a picture of this and I sent it off to the parents, and I said, hey, this is our team value system now that your girls want to be. So we'll be talking about at least one of these values every day at practice. And so if you have to talk to them on the ride home about that, maybe ask them what the value was of the day. Now during practice, when I said, okay, here's the session that we're doing, here's the technical and tactical aspect, every day we attached a value to it. So I might say, we might be doing something difficult and new for us. I'd say, so one of our values is fearlessness. Ladies, what does it mean to be fearless, right? And they would say, I'm not afraid to make mistakes, not afraid to try new things. And then during practice, I'm finding moments to catch them not only making a good pass or scoring a good goal, but I'm also finding moments of fearlessness. Saying, hey, Troy, I saw you try to make that turn, right? But it didn't come off, but that's okay because one of our values is fearlessness. That's being fearless. Do it again. So we create an environment where mistakes are encouraged because mistakes are something that happens when you're fearless. And when you're fearless, you're getting better. And then at the end of practice, right, I've had all these moments, these little rule of one moments, one person, one comment, one time to catch a kid being good, to catch them doing something well. At the end of practice, when I sum up and say, okay, this is what we covered today, I also say to them, and what was our value? Fearlessness. Does any one of you want to give one of your teammates a shout out for being fearless today? And then they get to acknowledge each other. Now, I'm still coaching this group today. If I forget to do shout outs at the end, they remind me. They want to acknowledge each other for being part of this. They want to leave on a good note. They want to leave on a high, right? At the end of the season, I didn't give out an MVP. I didn't give out a most improved. I went down the list of values and I talked about which girl on the team epitomized each one the most for me. And what was so cool was that as I would say the value, almost all the kids would look at the person who was going to get it. So they started to recognize these things in each other. This is transformational coaching. This is parents saying, wow, my kid's learning something more than just soccer skills or rugby skills or footy skills or whatever it is. These are life skills. These things apply for the rest of their lives. So why not start talking about them through sport? Now the best part about this was that, I took over the team and I told you it was in disarray. And we were in the wrong division and they were losing every game by 8 goals, 9 goals, 10 goals. At the end of the season, at the end of the dinner, the parents said, man, my daughter doesn't want this to end. She wants to keep playing. Of all my kids, this is the best sports experience any of my kids has ever had. We lost every game. We never won. We had no chance. But we set the bar differently. It became about something more than did we win. Loyalty from those families came about more than did we win. It's, what did we learn? What did we become? And since then, the team, and now I have the whole age group, and the teams are doing much better, and they are winning games. but we still check in with our values. And now we have 5 values. We reduce these down to 5, and we spent the time doing that. So I highly, highly recommend that. You get your values, you get your commitment. It's 20 minutes one time. It's 5 minutes a practice session, and it'll change your culture. I teach this. The club that I work in is a bit of a mess. And I taught this to all their coaches, and there's 25 coaches, and 4 of them did it and said that was the best season I ever had. And 21 kept doing what they're doing, right? Trust me, this works. If you miss a day, it doesn't matter, but stick to those values and get kids to acknowledge each other for them, okay? Oh yeah. Values matter on the professional level as well. Values matter, ownership matters, behavior matters. So my business partner, a guy named Dr. Jerry Lynch, works with, so far, his company that he started that now I partner with him on, called Way of Champions. He's won 36 NCAA titles across a variety of sports. He works very closely with a coach named Steve Kerr of the Golden State Warriors. Right? The Golden State Warriors have 4 core values: joy, mindfulness, accountability, compassion. And last week, as I was getting on a plane, there was a big hubdub in the US because during a game, Steve Kerr, during timeouts, he handed his clipboard to the players and said, "You guys run the timeout." You know, and the uproar was incredible. People going, "What's he doing? He can't do that." I'm like, wow, you've got employees that you're paying $30 million a year to, and they can't run a 30-second timeout? And so they asked him about it after the game, and here's what he said.
That during the timeouts you were having your players coach. Was it something you prepared, you wanted them to do, you told them was going to happen, or was that the spur of the moment decision to turn it over to your guys?
I told them the other night after the last game that we were going to do it. You know, it's their team. I think that's one of the first things you have to consider as a coach. It's not your team. It's not Bob Meyer's team. It's not Joe Lincoln's team. Although I'm not going to tell Joe that. It's a player's team. It's their team, and they have to take ownership of it. And as coaches, our job is to nudge them in the right direction, guide them. But we don't control them. They determine their own fate. And I don't feel like we focused well at all the last month. And it just seemed like the right thing to do. And I thought they communicated really well together, and they drew up some nice plays, and it was a good night for the guys.
He gave Omri the start tonight instead of Draymond, who's obviously out. He kind of needed a game.
It's pretty interesting, huh? It's their team. It's not our team, it's their team. The more we can make ourselves redundant, the more we can make our players take it right. Whoever goes out on Saturday and says, "I don't want my players to be accountable," right? I don't want them to be decision makers. I don't want them to be creative. We never do that. So where is that in our training session, right? If we want it, you know, if we want artists on the weekend, we can't have soldiers during the week. We need artists during the week, right? This is, youth sport is sport for development. Professional sport is sport for entertainment. It's a whole different thing. But the great coaches in professional sport recognize that if you give players accountability, if you give them ownership, they'll buy into what they're doing and they'll perform better. Great cultures have 3 components. There's a fantastic new book. Has anyone read The Talent Code by Dan Coyle? Oh, I'll see a couple of. So he's got a brand new book out called The Culture Code. And in it, he identifies, so he's looking at the world's most highly functioning teams in business and sport. And he identifies 3 qualities of great team cultures. Safety, right? And he talks about this, and I don't know that it's 5 seconds, but he calls it the 5-second rule. It's when people decide whether they're in or out. Your young players, do we greet them onto the field? Do we make eye contact? Do we start building this wall, that connection, the moment that they arrive at training, right? Or do we just, they're here, right? That's so important. I have a friend who runs an 8 and under soccer academy. And his number 1 rule is that every player gets greeted onto the field by name. And number 2, if a kid gets a haircut and the coaches don't notice, they owe him a Gatorade. That's connection. That's tying in to those kids. 5 seconds. Are they in? Are they out? He says in the book, leadership is asking someone how they're doing and actually caring what the answer is, right? So make that immediate connection, right? Tell your athletes, I see you, I notice you, you got your hair cut. Something that they do outside, right? When I get someone who misses because they have an orchestra concert, when I see them before the next practice, my first question is, hey, how'd your concert go? Right? I value the person, not just the athlete, right? We create belonging when we bring the right energy, when we focus on each individual, right? Coaching the child, not the sport, right? And we look at that future orientation. I see a few things that I can add to your game. Number 2 is vulnerability. Are we okay with making mistakes? A lot of times we look at vulnerability in ourselves as weakness, and we look at vulnerability in others as courage. The person who gets up there and admits when they were wrong and admits something horrible they did, man, that person's brave to do it. Then when we do it, we say, oh man, we're weak, right? So saying, I messed that up. Showing vulnerability, taking ownership of things. There's a great book called Extreme Ownership that came out about 2 years ago. It was written by a commander for the U.S. Navy SEALs. And in it, he talks about how important it is for leaders, for coaches, to own things first. Right? Have you ever given a halftime talk or whatever at a match, and you go out there, and the first thing you say is, defensively, you guys are letting us down today. And as soon as you blame there, what do? They blame the next group. And then the blame cascades down. But when a leader takes some ownership of it and says, you know what? A couple things aren't working there. That's on me. But I think we can fix this, and I think we can fix that. So this is 3 questions that I always ask my teams at halftime, and then sort of as we sort of regroup after a match before the next one, right? What went well? There's no match ever that everything was a disaster. What needs work? What can we learn from today that'll help us in the future? All right? What can we learn from losing that'll help us be better in training and by the game next week? What went well? What needs work? What can we learn? That keeps the focus on the process, that I can answer that question as well. Here are some things that I could work on better, and I will incorporate this into training so that we get better this week. And then the last, so we've got safety, we've got vulnerability, and the third is a unified purpose. A little catchphrase, something that says this is who we are and this is what we do. What happens here does not happen elsewhere. So I have this up here. One of the best sporting franchises in the last 20 years is the San Antonio Spurs in the NBA. 50 win seasons, 18 of them in a row, 5 NBA championships. And they have a catchphrase. It's called Pound the Rock. Pound the Rock. And when you walk into their practice facility, there's a big giant stone and a hammer. And then in the 5 languages, native languages of their players on their team, it tells the fable of the stonemason. And the fable of the stonemason is this, that the stonemason hits the rock 10 times, 20 times, 50 times, 100 times. And on the 101st blow, the stone cracks. But the stone didn't break because of the 101st blow. It broke because of the previous 100. So the only way to have success is to pound the rock every single day. So this is what the Spurs say. This is what they do. You see them in a huddle. They say, 1, 2, 3, pound the rock. They go to practice. What are we going to do? We're going to pound the rock. We're going to pound the rock. We get better every day. And we might not notice it today, but one day the stone is going to break. Right? Unified purpose. Everyone on the Spurs knows that they got to pound the rock. every day? Can we create that in our teams as well? All right, my watch stopped, by the way, so Troy's my timer now. So I have one more thing on this. And this is something that I added to my coaching this past year that's been super helpful. And I got it out of a book written by a teacher who wanted to connect better with her students. And so I added this to my sheet when we did our values training. I started asking them this one question. I said, write down this on the back of your sheet so I can collect and keep and understand this. I said, finish this sentence for me. One thing that I wish my coaches knew about me that would help them coach me better is ... And I said, don't put in something like, I need to work on my left foot. I'll figure that one out. Put something in there that I would not know about you, even if I coach you for the next 2 years. And some of the answers are incredible. You know, you might get something as simple as, I don't like being first in line to demonstrate, because coach, I don't understand you, right? Which is fine, right? I can deal with that. And others say, you know, another one said, coach, my parents are getting divorced. It's awful at home right now. Soccer is my favorite thing to do. If I ever look like I'm down or out, just understand that's what's going on. It's not soccer. It's a pretty powerful thing to know. It's a pretty powerful thing to understand that I might not know on its own. American football, Clemson University, has been the last 4 years the most successful program. Clemson and Alabama, 4 national playoffs in a row, national title last year, lost this year, lost in the title game the year before that. Clemson football, 18 to 23-year-old men, many from broken homes and bad seasons, they have a thing called the safe seat. And every day at practice, one of their 80 to 100 players on the roster sits on the safe seat in front of his teammates and answers that question, right? Tells his teammates something they would never know about him. And a lot of those end in tears, right? And creates that vulnerability and courage that brings the team together. So on day one, are you going to get something deep out of that? No, right? But you know, I think a lot of us here are probably really connected to our players and pay attention to this. So don't you, again, we go back to culture and behavior change. It's a process. It's not an event. So you can ask them, look, just give something. You're not going to share this with the team. This is just for me to know about you when things aren't going well, right, that I can check in on, right? And even if you get it from half, it's still worth it, right? It's still worth it. Right? I don't think in youth sport that we take this and share this publicly like we might in in a locker room of a bigger, stronger team. But there's plenty of examples in pro sport of coaches doing this type of work as well. Bringing the group together, helping them understand each other's strengths and where each other comes from. So, yeah. Okay, what time is it? I got 2 minutes. Shoot. All right, so are you going to do games-based stuff? Not a great deal. Good, well then I'm going to just do a quick demo of why games-based learning works better than blocked practice. Blocked practice meaning the repetition of of the same skill 52 times in a row. So I just need, can I get 5, 6 in the front row just to step up right here? And if you guys can make a line of 3 behind him, and then you hear a line of 3 behind Troy. Okay, so this right here is how most of us and how I grew up running practices, and these are block practices. So guys, we're gonna work on our grip strength today, right? So we're gonna work on handshake. So the first person in each line walks to the middle, you meet each other, shake hands, follow your pass to the end of the other line. Go ahead, so keep going, all right? So this is how we usually run practices. We're gonna work on passing or dribbling. So we get to the middle, we shake hands. Now guys, come on, the technique, right? Eye contact, firm grip, right? Good, the nod, good, you see the, right? That's excellent, that's creativity, right? We're gonna do this for the next 20 minutes. But I'm a good coach too, right? So, hey guys, switch to the left. Right? Because we've got to work on both hands, right? Right? And this is how we coach, block practice. And the more they do it, the more they start kind of, really? When do we get to play? And so on and so forth. Okay, you guys stop. Now come on over here, just make a circle over here in that area. All right, and we're going to do something called a human knot. So get in a circle. So you have to grasp hands, right, with two different people and not the person next to you. All right, so across the square, all right? All right, can't be the person next to you. It's got to be across. All right, you guys all set? Untangle yourselves, go. We have a physio here just in case. Ooh, look at this. Fantastic, guys. What did you hear in that game? Communication. What else? Heavy breathing. Having fun. Teamwork. A little bit of leadership. Right? Was there problem solving? Was there decision making? Right? Aren't all those things pretty helpful during the game? Where are they in our practice? They have to be in our practice. The sooner we add defenders, the sooner we add decisions, the more transferable it is. And the science of learning is very, very clear on that. Games-based learning is more fun, it's more realistic, and it's a lot messier, but it's actually a lot stickier. And the science on that is pretty much irrefutable. Right? And I understand that lots of us were taught, well, you got to learn this technique before you go into the game, but actually learning the technique in a game-based scenario is far more likely to transfer and far more likely to stick. Give these guys a hand. Thanks, guys. Well done. So that takes us from knowledge, that's blocked, to experience. We attach it to the decisions of the game. The goal in training shouldn't necessarily be 1,000 touches, it should be 1,000 decisions involved in those touches. So there's my reading list for you. Right? Power of Moments is just a great book on how to create powerful, extraordinary moments. Inside Out Coaching by Joe Ehrman. I mentioned The Culture Code, Dan Coyle. And then if you really like to geek out on the science of learning, Make It Stick, The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown has all the research behind why we do games-based learning. I have a gift for all of you for attending today because I love coaches. You guys can influence more people this season than most people influence in their life. So if you go to my website /coaching, and at checkout you enter in all caps, COACHPASS. We just have a 1-hour online coaching course, which is about communication and connection and character building, and it has a lot of the stuff that I talked about today and some forms that you can download so you can do that in your own practice, okay? And then that's all my info. If you like podcasts, we have a podcast called The Way of Champions, books, things like that. My direct email if we don't get a chance to answer all your questions today. But I'll leave you with this. As a coach, your influence is never neutral. It's never neutral. It's either positive or it's negative. So you have to be intentional about it. And the more aware that you are of your influence, the more powerful it becomes. Thanks, guys.
Fantastic, John. Thanks very much for that. Is there some questions from the floor? We've got a few moments for questions. We've also got some copies of John's book to give away if you've got some good questions. This lady down here gets one straight up because
So yeah, minimize that.
she jumped in there nice and early, and it was a good
There you
question.
go. Double click it.
Questions? Hands up.
It's open.
Boring's good. Second last screen back up. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll put that back up at the end.
Yeah.
Is that the reading material
So-
one?
Okay,
coach
so
class
it's just changingthegameproject.com/coaching. Yeah.
Question over the back there. Sue from Squash.
Hi, thanks, that was brilliant. I've got a question. How do we go about changing or helping coaches that have been coaching for a long, long time to get involved in this? And obviously they're not here today. You know, you want the right people to come. Like, I'd like certain parents to come tonight, but they're not necessarily going to come. Is this on podcast or?
Yeah, our podcast is all about coaching. It's got sports scientists. Like last week, we had a guy named Dr. Mark Williams, who's one of the world experts on skill acquisition, talking about games-based learning. This week, we have a woman named Cindy Timschel, who is the all-time winningest lacrosse coach and won the most national championships of any coach in women's collegiate history in the U.S. We've had World Cup winning coaches across many sports and Olympic gold medalists, World Cup winners, things like that as well. So that's on there. Your challenge is this. Your challenge is this. You're never going to change everyone, right? There's some people who say, oh, this is what I've always done, right? You know, and as my wife, who's a physician, says, well, you know, we used to pull teeth with a shot of whiskey, but we don't do that anymore either, right? So sometimes we can spend all our energy trying to change them, and realistically, sometimes it's better find the people who are willing to change, bring them into your group, pour into them, and start creating a culture that that sustains the change. And it's no longer comfortable for someone to coach like this. See, the problem in coaching, especially where I am, is that coaches want to be considered professionals, but they don't act like professionals, right? Professional doesn't mean I take a paycheck. Professional means that I'm consistently seeking excellence in what I do, right? And so if we want coaching to be a profession, then we need to act like that and continually do that. And I meet people all the time who I can present all the evidence and they still disagree, and so my response to them is, you can ignore it, but you just can't dispute it. So go ahead and go ignore it at your own peril. Coaching is about effectiveness, right? So it doesn't mean that yelling and screaming at